your representative to have discussions with the producers or the representatives of the show. Let's go right away into the first program, which is Ultra Strips Down from DR Denmark. And do we have Christopher Ebbesen with us?
I'm here.
Excellent, wonderful. So this is a program that it's a great one to start with because it got the comment that probably more than any other comment we hear at Prigioness over the years, and that is, I wish I could do that in my country. I never could. What is it about DR, about Denmark, that allows you to do a program of such daring?
Well, that's hard to say. Maybe that it isn't that daring seen in a Danish context. I think you could also say the traditional saying, we're not, the Scandinavian countries, we're not that much into guns, but swearing and nudeness isn't that big of a problem. Still, of course, it's something that we haven't done before, and it gained quite a bit of publicity in Denmark as well, I'll have to say.
And I think what people responded to most was just how natural and unembarrassed the kids were. That they the presenter gives them just a moment to kind of laugh by saying, "You've probably never seen this before, or anything like this before." But they are so natural and in their questioning and in their response. How were the children prepared before the program?
In all our 5 programs, it was school classes, which meant they knew each other. They had a natural room for talking to each other and asking questions, so they knew each other well, which I think was a really, really nice thing for them to be able to. We all know how it is to ask a question when we don't know who's around us. Furthermore, the teachers of these classes we prepared them to be able to have a talk with the children about being nude in all simplicity, and they had a chance to write down questions in advance. Our main concern, this is of course a live on tape production, but our main concern was that they did not have any questions. So of course the host was loaded with questions that the class had written down in advance. Questions from Instagram, questions from ourselves, but we never got around to using them because there were so many questions from the children. So I just think, they were kind of curious on the subject.
And what's fascinating is their questions were very honest. They were very, very interesting. And they were often very difficult questions. I mean, some of the questions like, are you happy with your body, or can be very hard ones for people to ask. Were the kids at all coached in what would be a good question?
We had talked about sexualizing questions, that this wasn't a program about, this wasn't how to learn to have sex program. This was a program that was just curious on the body. But besides that, no, they hadn't been coached.
And a couple of questions that people had about the structure of the show. Some questioned whether the presenter was necessary, felt that he kind of got in the way of the relationship between the kids and the people, the nude people. What was the decision to have a presenter on camera?
Well, totally honest, of course, we did not know how the children would react. We had more of an idea of how the grown-ups would react, but we thought no matter how that it was a good idea to have them divided. We had a lot of talk with the ethics department at the Danish Broadcasting Corporations prior to doing this as well. And just as an example of how we did it, we wanted to separate the children and the nude grown-ups. Also, so that you'll never have a picture where there are children and nude grown-ups in the same framing at all. And of course, not in directly the same way, but as a matter of the same thinking, we wanted the host to be able to separate the children and the nude people. And so actually, we wanted to make a bit of a barrier.
That makes sense. And there were also questions about the scene with the donuts. I think what people said was it didn't seem like quite the right visual for the audience at home to understand the counting of holes, or a clear way to get the kids' guesses. And there were some who questioned the health element of the donuts, especially when one of the questions was about overweight. But what was the thinking behind that?
Um, we are an online exclusive platform, Dia Ultra. Our linear TV channel has closed, and we talk a lot about how to keep the awareness within a program up for our audience. And you could say we could definitely have asked this question. We could just have done it as a regular question from the host to the children. We could have done a lot of other things to gain the same amount of information. But we talk a lot about how we want to switch from education to entertainment within a show, and this was, of course, the more definitely unhealthy and entertaining part. So it was a way of keeping attention together with managing a bit of a learning element, you can say.
Very good. And the other question that came in was that there was a variety of body shape and size, but a lot of people asked why there were no either disabled people or people from other ethnic groups or people with either body deformities may not be the right term, but even scars or anything like that.
Well, stay tuned for season 2. Well, of course, this was only this was 1 out of 5 programs that's been screened here. We are quite an ethnic homogen country, you could say. We are quite pale, our Danes. So we actually had a hard time finding other people. And more than that, we wanted people who wanted to be part of the show more than we wanted to cherry pick people. But I can say that in one of the 5 programs, the programs regarding female breasts, it's called 9 breasts, 5 women and 9 breasts, and we had a prior cancer patient with us who actually only had 1 breast left. And the amount of attention that gained from both the audience at home and the children in the studio was enormous. So we are filming next week, season 2, where we have a lot of different. Actually, instead of talking about body parts and how a regular body can be seen in many shapes, we actually talk about irregular bodies. So there you'll have wheelchair patients, you'll have a transgendering male, you'll have people whose entire body are tattooed, you'll have girls who's never shaved a part of their body. We'll have a lot of different bodies in season 2, but it was a really hard task to find people that actually wanted to be part of this. So we were actually just happy to find somebody with a single breast, and you could call it kind of a beast man.
Are the people that you use actors, or are they?
Nope, that's just
people were so impressed by the naturalness of the naked people in talking with the kids and in standing there before them that they wondered if they were actors because they were so comfortable.
No, they were cast, of course, to be some of those who actually were better than others to talk about with the children. But we actually just put up an online request for people wanting to be part of this, and then we picked the best talkers, but no actors.
Very good. Well, I think we're going to move on to the next program, but I do want to leave, and I know you'll be back later for another program, but I do want to leave just with a comment from one of the youth jury members who said, I understand that the purpose of the program is to desexualize the human body, to be able to see the body naturally, but to normalize the body shapes. But I don't think it's right to expose 5th graders to nudity in a program. I think it's for older kids. What was your ideal target audience for this?
Our target audience with this was 7 to 12-year-olds. And of course, we didn't see the same problem.
Didn't see that.
Yeah, and of course, we didn't see the same problem in a Danish context. I mean, and it is important to say that this was also shown in Danish context.
Exactly, and that's always the answer to that question I started with about why can't we do it here, is the cultural context of different things. Very good. Well, we will see you back in just a little bit, and right now we're going to move on to program number 2, which is Kids of Courage. Eva from the Czech Republic and we have with us Ramona Bergmann from Lux Films and Lene Nickel from SWR in Germany. Are you both here?
Yeah.
Yes.
Excellent. Welcome. Thank you. Uh, so we're seeing this program. We as Pre-Jeunesse are screening this program at a particular moment, a particular week where violence and discrimination is really at the top of certainly our minds here in the U.S. And I have seen in the comments of others that people are watching from all around the world what's going on here and having the same thoughts. How did you intend the series to have a message for today's children beyond just reminding them of what happened in 75 years ago?
For us, it was one of the many requirements our stories have to have, because to be suitable for us to tell in this episode. So it was one major point, because we didn't want to tell history in the for the sake of history itself. For us, it was very important rather to tell it in the aim of forming a bridge from the past to the present, so that the target group can benefit from the experience of the protagonist. So parallels was very important for us.
Was the series accompanied by materials that helped kids make that connection that were either used either at home or by the kids searching them out themselves or in schools to help them make that connection?
What exactly do you want to know? Sorry?
Were there materials, educational materials or context materials to support?
Yeah, we supported the teachers and the schools with a lot of materials. So there's, for every episode, there are school materials as well. Yes.
Very good. And a lot of people had questions about the format, the mix of drama and documentary and using of the models of this in this episode in particular, the sort of overview of the camp. Was there a logic or a pattern to what you chose to use when?
You mean, yes, of course, we thought about when we used the drama scene, and of course, when we used the animation and the archive. Of course, it's part of the concept. I think this mixed format or hybrid format is, I think it's very good for kids because history is connected to one story, and then it's added, a little bit with the archive material, so the kids get to know it's real history. And of course, the animation is a very important part, to illustrate, such different topics like the camps.
We had some comments that felt that most felt that this mix was very good, this mix of drama and documentary and the models. There were some who felt that it might allow you to avoid some hard truths at times, that being able to go to the overview of the models of a sort of peaceful camp or to use the drama. Yeah. Do you have a reaction to that? Or?
I think, every time, of course, we get reactions a little bit like, can you do it for children? And we were on the edge between, to be historically correct and telling the truth of the story, but do it in an age-prominent matter, so do it for children. So I really understand a little bit the point, but for me the question is, we need to tell it, and that's my real opinion. And I think also we need to tell that part of history, not only in Germany, but mostly, of course, in Germany. It's our duty to the kids. And I think it's not a question. Yeah, it's really a question of how. And you can't tell it with these, brutal archive material. And that's the reason why we choose that way, to combine it with these different elements.
It's just the first step for us to get the kids involved with this particular part of history. It's just the first step. So it's not covering all, it's just to lead them into this topic.
The first step of a project that you're doing, or to send them
No,
off to study for themselves or
It's
to learn for
I
yes,
themselves?
of
think
course.
for themselves. For us, it's also important that it's not only the 8 episodes, because we had an accompanying offer on the internet, and there we had also contemporary witnesses which were interviewed from children, and so I think this is also important. So it's just one step, and the other steps come around.
I think it's very important. Yes, it's like an exit. It's like a door is open to this topic, and I think a lot of kids, and that's also I had a lot of reactions like that. That they say, "Oh, I really didn't know that, and now I want to do more. I want to know more." So, and of course, it's also we had a lot of program beside, like Lena did the interviews with Time Witness. We also did an exhibition. So yeah.
And what did you do with scheduling or such to help so that parents might be able to see it too, or that kids would who were watching it, if they had questions, would have access to help right away?
When we first put it in broadcasted this episode, there was a chat surrounding our episode, so that they can directly ask their questions, and we react directly to the questions of them. And also YouTube, when they watch it there in the Kindernet channel, we react on their comments and give them answers.
Did you hear back from both kids and parents what their reaction was?
Yeah, the reactions were surprisingly positive. Or for us, it was we expected to be confronted with more worried parent voices for broadcasting, but our preparations were correspondingly very good. Our accompanying offer was on the internet was very detailed, so I think this all together helped a lot. We received mostly positive feedback from the parents. Parents find it very important, and the parents were happy that the children get a sense of the time, and they start asking questions. And I have one quotation, because I saw this question in the comments. So one mother, for example, wrote, "You managed to implement such a theme in a way that it is suitable for kids, and above all exciting and captivating for children, but also without producing is." And that was what we wanted to receive, and I think this was a nice email for us.
Exactly the comment I would hope to have heard from that question. One more question before we have to move on to the next program. And what's interesting is this is a question that came from the youth jury, one of the youth juries that watched this around the world. But it's also something that we discussed. I was on the pre-selection panel for PJI20 this year, and it's also something we discussed when we first saw it back in January. Some of the kids said they thought maybe it was a fiction program, not a nonfiction program, because for the purposes of PJI20, whether it should fit in the fiction category or nonfiction, because of that mix of drama and documentary. Where do you see it sitting? Which in the balance, which way do you see it going?
That's a good question, because yeah, it's a mix. I think, of course, the storyline is the drama scene, is the drama. So yeah, but it has, of course, a documentary part. So or something like a documentary part or documentary aim. So I think it depends on your view. So
it's based on real history and real heroes,
stories.
and real stories. So it's a lot of documentary parts in it.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon for you, this morning for me. Thank you for the program, and I know a lot of people are very curious about what the other episodes are. So I hope that PJI20 participants will go off and discover the other stories. I've had a chance to see one of the others. So thank you very much. We're going to go on now to Behind the Rainbow, music beats from Storytown Pro in South Africa. Do we have Charlene Stanley with us?
Maybe
Should we
now?
go on to?
Maybe
Oh,
now?
there we go. Now Yes, now I hear you. Perfect. I'm going to jump right into it. The opening titles talk about Duelin's passion being music, but it turns out that it's dance. Does he see dance as an expression of music, or was that to fit the series format? I see. Um, how did this episode fit into the series, and did that have something to do with how his passion was described?
Thanks very much for this opportunity, David. It's wonderful to be able to join you here on a sunny afternoon in South Africa. It's wonderful to see that there are so many people passionate about children's storytelling all over the world. Behind the Rainbow is really about, obviously kids have many different passions, and Julian is no exception. I think in some, you'll remember if you watch the insert, there's a section where he joins the band and he plays the drums. So yes, the dance is very much an expression of his love for music. And we do have a very fixed structure where every episode is about a certain passion. So he fits into the episode that focuses on music. And in this case, it's two very different styles of music. It's classical music and hip hop. And the whole idea behind the Rainbow is to show kids from such a variety of areas in South Africa, such different backgrounds, but sharing this common passion and how it enriches their lives.
What were some of the other episodes that were in there? What were some of the other passions that you found around the country?
It's really very wide. It ranges from passions for animal welfare, books. We had two young writers in one episode. We had an episode where we had kids with physical disabilities and life-threatening illnesses, where it was really a passion for life that we focused on. So it's a wide variety of things. And it's also about overcoming obstacles. Behind the Rainbow is very much about how kids overcome obstacles in our country by living out this passion for something. So I think variety is the key word here, that we had so many different kids and so many different stories that we focused on.
And was there an effort to focus on kids who come from difficult circumstances but overcome, or was there a mix of kids from all different socioeconomic groups and ethnic groups and so forth?
Yes, now there was a bit of everything. South Africa has a lot of challenges. Our kids face a lot of obstacles, and so we really had no shortage of stories and shortage of case studies to choose from. But every episode had that element of overcoming. It could be something that we could maybe see as relatively, a smaller challenge, like shyness that had to be overcome, or just being taken seriously as a youngster, venturing out in an adult world and not being taken seriously by adults. But we also touched on more serious issues, big obstacles like poverty, like physical disabilities, like bullying. There was really a bit of everything.
How did you find the children? How did you go about finding the stories?
It really wasn't difficult. I have a journalistic background. I come from 20 years of news and current affairs. So a lot of these kids, we worked in different areas in South Africa as well, come from communities that I've dealt with, that I've worked in as a journalist. But then also just picking up on, and we started with small local newspapers because we wanted to focus on kids that don't necessarily, are well known nationally. We didn't go for the high flyers, for the national champions and the, that already made a name for themselves. We wanted just to focus on kids with passions. So often we used the passion as a starting point where we knew we wanted a young artist or a young dancer, and we knew there was an interesting community that could maybe provide someone that fitted the bill. So it wasn't difficult to find these kids.
That's really interesting. One of the things you just said answers in part one of the questions that came in that had to do with sometimes shows about talented children. There have been a lot of shows about talented children over the years, and sometimes those shows leave the children at home not with the feeling of I'm going to go out and find my passion, find my talent, but with there's something I can't do. There's something that somebody else is good at and I'm not. How do you? It sounds like focusing on the passion is the start of it, but how do you make sure that that young people in your program are relatable to kids at home and inspire them to find their own passion, not to look at this one and say, I don't do, that's not me.
Yeah, I think just that we didn't go for the champions and the the national record holders or whatever. We went for normal, your ordinary run-of-the-mill kids that had just had this passion that helped them overcome difficulties. And that was really, I would say, the subtext of our whole series as well. That kids need to look at this and realize that they are not alone. That there are kids like them in all corners of South Africa. I mentioned that we are blessed with so many different regions. I mean, South Africa is really a world in one country. There are such diverse communities in our country, colorful, very, very different. I mean, a kid in Johannesburg, city slicker, is very much different from a kid in a rural province like Limpopo, way to the north. But there's this feeling that we wanted to communicate, or this message that even though we are so different and we come from such different areas, we have such different backgrounds, different stories, there's something that binds us together. And that lies in the passion, but also in being able to overcome a difficulty and using that passion to overcome.
This episode in particular included a lot of adult time with adults, the teachers and trainers of the two kids, and talking about what they saw in the kids. Was that typical of the episodes? Because some people said they felt like there was too much adult time, but was that typical, or was that unique to this episode? Or?
No, in every episode we have a parent and either a coach or a mentor or a teacher just responding. And the main reason for that was just to have this objective view of how the passion changed the kid, that we have a grown-up or someone that deals very closely with this kid to explain how the passion changed him or her by, discovering the passion and living it out. So what I found, what was very interesting for me as a producer, is that in each of these kids' lives, there was this presence of an adult, either in the form of a parent that was very involved, or a coach or a teacher that believed in this kid. And I thought that was a very important thing to bring out, an important aspect of the story, that these kids need to be believed in and they need to be encouraged to live out their passions. So I think there's also obviously our target audience was kids, but they so often watch programs with their parents, and we were hoping just to communicate this message as well, that it's so important to show children that you believe in them and that you encourage them. And in that sense, the adults really played a very important role. But we didn't want them to hijack the show, so we kept their comments very short.
Sure. We, from what you were just saying, we had a really interesting reaction from one of the youth jury members who said, this really makes me see why certain people are lazy, since you think they can have everything, but people who don't have much money can show that there's no excuse for not being what you want to be.
Well said.
One last question, and before we move on, and that is, a number of people commented, both children, the youth juries and the adults commented on the length of the program. Was that kind of mandated by SABC, or they felt it might be a little bit long for kids? Was it mandated, or did you feel that was the right length?
Yes, it was. It's a half an hour slot, which translates to about 23 minutes with ad breaks. So yes, we had to fill a slot. I also read in the comments that some people felt maybe the pace wasn't fast enough. But once again, I think, like our colleague from Denmark remarked, that it's maybe a cultural thing in Africa. stories tend to be told slower and develop slower, and we need some time to absorb things, where I suppose in California, the pace might be slightly faster. Yes, the short answer to that, yes, we had to work in a certain time slot. I didn't feel as a storyteller that it was too long. You know, we always ended up with more to be said, obviously. But yes, it was a 30-minute time slot.
I'm very glad you brought up that part about so many elements of a program depend on culture, not just what we can and can't show, but also the pace of the program and the storytelling style and that. Thank you so much for joining us. Stick around for the rest of the discussion, but then go enjoy that beautiful afternoon in South Africa. And
thanks so much for the opportunity again.
Very good. Thanks. We're going to move on now to Brothers from TV7 in Vietnam. Do we have Van Linh and Nguyen Nhat Dui with us?
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Here.
Oh, look at that beautiful background with lots of children.
Yes, this is the photos from one of our movie. So today only
okay.
me here.
Glad you could join us. It must be late evening there.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Very good. Such a lot of comments about this program and the lovely style and it was completely unique from anything else that we've seen for quite a while at Parisienness. A lot of people commented particularly about the animation and the way that it allowed you to tell some very difficult parts of the story that might have been harder to tell with the documentary format. Can you talk a little about your thinking with the animation?
The story is about two brothers. They are doing street performance every day to earn their living. So the smaller brother, he just got home. So when the mother just gave birth to the little brother, because the family was so poor, so the mother have to send the little brother to another family. So the other family, the young brother, just home 2 months ago, before we met him, before we filmed.
So
this part of the story.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Okay, so and I think this the part that the mother sent the little brother away from home is good to tell, because the audience gonna have the sympathy with the situation of the two brothers. And then we come up with the idea of using animation to tell the story, so the kids gonna have more imagination about us and family of the little brother.
And I suppose it was parts of the story that
David?
Yep. Can you hear? I suppose it was parts of the story that you couldn't tell with documentary because it had happened long before. So the animation was a very, very effective way. How did you find these brothers? How did you locate them?
So we had the idea because we looked the material of the people who performs on the street in Ho Chi Minh City. So there's a lot of people, they do street performance during the night. And then we wonder if kids doing that. So we spend like 2 weeks and eating on the street every night. And finally we found them. We found two brothers.
What a remarkable thing to find such a compelling story, such a emotional story.
Yes, because we love that material, and we don't know if kids doing that, but finally we found two brothers.
I think a lot of Parisienness participants don't know much about Vietnamese television. How do you schedule something like this so that other teenagers will find it?
Without the documentary, you mean?
Yeah. The question is how do you put it on television so that teenagers will find it? Do teenagers usually watch your channel? Do you have to do special outreach to help them find it?
Yes. Yeah. So VTV7 is a channel for younger age, and they have a lot of program for age. We on social media about the movie, online as well.
Did you hear from the audience afterwards how they understood it and how they liked the story?
Yes, I think I received so many comments and also reviews from the audience. They like the story because it's simple. It doesn't have a big message. It's just a beautiful part of life in life, and the way the two brothers share the love to each other and overcome their difficulties every day. So I think the audience in Vietnam, they kind of like this type of documentary that's telling the truth and very simple message
You
about
do a
life.
lot of you do a lot of documentaries for young people?
Yes,
Very good.
like primary
Well,
school students.
so start very early with documentary. Start with primary. Very good.
Yes.
Well, I think you hit your target because one of the youth jury members, an 11-year-old, said, "I thought it was very nice, and I liked the final sentence in which the older brother tells him, 'I loved him because I couldn't help loving him.' I thought that was very nice that brothers say that to each other." I think that sentence sums up the whole show. That is such a beautiful way of describing it. That I loved him because I couldn't help loving him. So thank thank you very much for creating
Thank you.
that beautiful relationship, or showing us that beautiful relationship between the two brothers. Very good.
Yeah, thank you too.
Thank you. We're going to go on next to the hacking experiment. We're going to bring back Christopher Ebbesen from DR.
I'm here.
This one got a lot of discussion, as you would have seen if you went into the chat section. Tell us about the setup of it, and particularly about the discussions you had around the ethics of the setup. There were some people who felt that violating trust in order to teach a lesson about violating trust doesn't really work. So talk a little about the ethics of the setup.
First of all, I can just introduce the program as being part of a bigger theme. It's hard to see in this, of course, but the total brand of DR Ultra, our omnibus brand for the 7 to 12-year-olds, we're all about hacking. The weeks that this show aired as well. Our news broadcasting for the children were about hacking. Our fiction airing those weeks were about hacking, and this was the unique program we shipped out to the audience in those few weeks about hacking as well. And back to the ethics, because there were a lot of discussions. The big plan for this was to make the children more aware about hacking, and we had a lot of talks about how to do that. And they all ended up with somebody saying, "But this has already been done." If all the children who will read a brochure with 5 tips, all the children who will join some ministerial site on their own, all the children who will go to the library and read a book about this or Google it by themselves, well, they will have to assume that they don't have a problem with all of this, because if they are so eager to learn about it, if they are so aware of the threat, well, then they already know. So we said those aren't our target audience. Our target audience are all the children who never think about these things themselves. and how on earth do we reach them? Because they won't read the brochure or visit the ministerial website or any of the, I mean, in any country, I assume there are lots and lots of good advices online or publicized in a lot of ways, but there are so few of them that the children seek themselves. And that was what we wanted to do. We wanted to make something that your children would reach out to by themselves and actually learn something from. And that's why we ended up with this. And again, just like strips down, a lot of talks with the ethics department. And we actually ended up saying we can do this if we in no way only put one child. I mean, there always need to be more than one who will experience this. We can't keep it to a single child, and we need to air it in a story told as if this happens to a lot of people. We are just making examples with a few. And the third big thing was also saying we need to end these cases in a positive way as well, was the way we saw it. So they all need to be able to come back and tell us after we did this hack to them what they felt, what they think they would have learned, and where they stand today. And using those three ground rules, we actually ended up finding it acceptable to do the program.
And that actually was one of the questions that came back was, were there any kids who were fooled by it, who came in for the casting and then said, no, I don't want this. I don't want this used.
Of course, the children did not know they were a part of this. Their parents knew, of course. I mean, one thing is the ethics, another is the laws, and of course we can't contact these children. We can't hoax them out to a fake casting without their parents' awareness of it.
Tell us more about that. Describe how that. Take us through the process from kids responding.
What we actually we have a lot of. Well, we do fiction as well as we do news and factual. So we have a big database of children who's contacted us saying, I would like to be part of your next fiction or your next TV series. And within all of those GDPR safe categorizes, we found 25 girls living in an area around where we were doing this TV program within an age group that we found fitting. And then we actually started out by contacting their parents and saying, we're going to do a program about hacking and about fake casting profiles. We would like to contact your child and invite them to a fake hacking. And well, I said 25, that's because we ended up with 25 girls. I really can't remember how many we contacted, but I think it was no more than a handful of parents who said, no, we are not interested on behalf of our child in being part of this experiment. The rest was a part of it and found it a really good way to teach their own children and all of Danish children about how to think about your online behavior.
I imagine a lot of parents said, thought exactly that this is,
yes.
this is a good way to learn an object lesson. But just tell me then, the Instagram page and post, was that actual? I mean, is that how the girls found their? And all that we saw in the program were girls, and I'll come back to that. Is that how they found their way to it, or were they contacted directly?
We contacted them via the Instagram. I mean, the fake Instagram profile that we did with a lot of Indian followers, I remember it like, we used that to contact the girls on their Instagram profile saying, are you interested in going to an online casting?
Okay, so it was a direct reach, not just
yes.
an Instagram post that somebody that.
No, it was a direct reach to those 25 girls that we already had parents' allowances or from their parents been allowed to contact.
And it was labeled as a DR casting.
No, it was not.
No,
I can't remember the name of the casting bureau, but we said nothing about where we had their contacts from. We just contacted them saying, we're looking for an actor who could be you in age and appearance. Would you be interested in attending this casting?
And did all the parents who said yes at the very start also say yes afterward?
Yes.
Were there any parents who, okay.
Nope.
Did
But
they
we
have a
had,
chance to see their kids, how they
well,
reacted?
afterwards the parents had a chance to back out, and of course the children did too. The only ones we could ask in advance were the parents. We asked them again afterwards, and we asked the children as well, and they got to see the final programs as well.
And we had, I mentioned it before, we had questions about the fact that it was all girls who responded to it. Yeah. Were there boys and they just didn't make the final cut? Or?
Yeah, well, anybody who actually showed up made the final cut.
Okay.
We contacted, well, it was 25, so it hadn't been 50-50, but we contacted almost as many boys as girls, but they did not show up. Not saying there's any statistical significance in that at all, but it was only these three that actually came to the casting studio.
Oh, okay. Maya Gutz has a question that's come in as we've been speaking. Maya, are you there?
Yes, we have a question from Marie McCann. Did Instagram know what you were doing?
No, they did not. I think the best thing we can say in that way is that we of course made it an account that wasn't public, so only those that we contacted could contact us as well. But no, we had no prior talks to Instagram before starting this.
And let me ask you one last question, then we'll move on to the last show for the first hour. And that is, you mentioned at the beginning wanting this to be for the people who don't go off and look for media literacy, digital literacy information. But then in the end, you don't spend a lot of time on solutions or on what to do, how to avoid being fooled. Were there other resources that were used for that, or other episodes?
Specifically, we made our children's news broadcasting that week was all about that, and this was also part of a big educational program in schools. So Danish schools picked up on that one, if you can say so. Our main task was to raise awareness and say, think what you're doing in a way that nobody had said it before. And then we had the news broadcasting, then we had the schools educational programs picking up on the other tasks.
Very good. Thank you for joining us for 2 programs this morning.
You're welcome.
And we are going to move on to the last program of the first hour, and that's #We Friendship Limitless. And do we have Jenny Weber-Reis with us?
Yes.
Very good. Welcome. Lots of good comments about this program, and a lot of questions about how the multimedia aspect of the series works. There was a mention that this is really this is a multimedia series. What were the other elements beyond what we saw on the television screen?
We wanted to make an innovative and entertaining format, especially for social media. And so we choose a modular structure, which is completely different from classic TV formats. We don't create one episode by its own. For every protagonist couple, we create a toolbox based off different modules. And some modules we used for YouTube, some for Instagram, some for our podcast or our website. And so up to the beginning, the aim was to create a multimedia format customized for each platform.
Okay. And can you describe some of those other elements?
Some elements we have, especially a language course. We have some information about the different cultures. We get some information about the hobbies, and each module you can post on a social media platform, and you don't have to make any compromises. For example, the format works in horizontal and in vertical for each module.
I can see this being for a couple different audiences, and I wonder who you had in mind as the ideal audience. There's the idea of helping native German kids better understand the cultures of the people who have moved to Germany, who have come to Germany. there's also the element of helping those who have come to better understand the culture that they've moved into. How did you see who did you see as the ideal audience for this?
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. Who did you have in? I guess at its most simple, who did you have in mind as the audience that you wanted to watch this? Certainly 11 to 15, but was it more for immigrant young people who are trying to learn their way in German culture, or for German kids who are trying to understand all the new people who have arrived?
It's for both, but especially for German kids.
Okay, and what do you hope they'll take away? That just better understanding of the different cultures that now make up Germany? Yeah.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. Okay. What other kinds of friendships did you show during the series? Does that the series? There's #we and there's friendship across borders. Maybe describe with the two different parts.
Okay. In every episode, we have two best friends who share a hobby but have a different cultural background, and they have different religions, and they have made different experiences. They share one hobby, and they have to master a challenge. And the cultural background doesn't matter for them. It was important to us to show that there are many different protagonists and much diversity. Yes.
Good. I think that's exactly where I was headed. Was what were some of the other friendships that you showed? What were the common, what made them friends, and what were their different cultural backgrounds?
We have people from Senegal, from Nigeria, from Russia, from Togo, and we show them their friendships and their different and their hobbies.
And their hobbies. Some people asked why you didn't show the two friends interacting more with other people in Germany, with German people their own age. They talk with the young woman who gives them the acting challenge, but that you don't see them out interacting with culture. Was that a decision just to focus on the two and not their bigger life?
Yes, we want to focus at the friends, but in the episode we have different friendships, and in this episode you have seen there are two friends who came from different countries to Germany, and in some episodes we have somebody who lives in Germany for longer time and someone who's especially a fresh refugee.
Were there they were from, in some ways, similar cultures, somewhat different, but more similar. Were there ones that were across a bigger gap of cultures?
Yes, of course, especially of a couple who still is 1 year in Germany. There's more clash.
Were there some whose friendship was with a native German?
Yes, of course.
Very good. And tell me a little about the challenges. What other kinds of challenges were posed to friends? This one seemed a little simple. They had to put the words into the into their acting, but they didn't have to put the words in context. What other kinds of challenges did you set for friends?
Of course, in this episode, the challenge doesn't work very well, but we have some other challenges. Some friends have to do some sports, or they have make some funny challenges, and yeah, they are very different.
Very good. Is there a plan to continue this? Are you doing more friendships, or are you taking a different approach now? Or
Yes, we have some more episodes.
how many are there altogether? How many episodes?
We have 26, and now there are more 30, which will come in autumn, I think.
That's great, and they're all available once they've aired. You can go and search all of them.
Yes, there are at YouTube.
Very good. Thank you very much. We've come to the end of hour one. Thank you for joining us for the discussion period. And we're going to move on. I'm going to shift my papers here and move on to page 2 of our agenda, and on to youth news at PTS from Taiwan Public Television Service. Do we have Chialing and Yan? I'm sorry, She Chialing and Lai Yinju?
Hi, David.
Hello.
Hello, I'm the translator from Taiwan.
Very good.
Yeah,
Thank
but
you
the
very much.
directors and the producers are also sitting next to me. So
Are with you.
they might appear later on.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Hello.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay.
Excellent. So the same-sex marriage referendum was only passed in 2019 in Taiwan. Was this a difficult program to get done because it was still so fresh?
你们有觉得就是这个，因为去年才刚 legalize 那个嘛 same sex， 那你们有觉得这个很难吗？就是这个 program 很难做吗？
其实还不好找，好，我们找了1年多。
Hi, David.
Hello. Hi.
Yeah, we met a lot of difficulties when finding the proper family for us to interview.
How did you find the family to be interviewed?
Yeah, it's we found the family because one of the directors we know has filmed for an association of gay parents and gay family. Yeah, so and this family in the program is actually one of them in the association. Yeah, so this is how we got the connection, and so they started to talk about whether we should make the program or not.
It seems like you found the perfect family. There were so many comments in the as people screened about how strong the young narrator was, and about her really lovely understanding of the concept of family.
Yeah.
Where is Youth News an ongoing and regular series that young people would know to watch, so that this would just be an episode to them that would fit into the series, or was this a special thing?
Yeah, it's a series, and we got
这是单集。
这是单集。It's like an special episode of this kind of series. Yeah.
Does Youth News air every day or every week, or?
I think every week. Yeah, every week.
And
yeah.
Did this special episode was it shown as part of the regular series time, or was it put at a special time or given a special place?
Yeah, it's in the same time of the Youth News at PTS, not like a particular time.
So young people are used to tuning in to see the program at that time.
Yeah.
Was there any what kind of response did this get from the audience and also from parents? Was it well accepted?
Yeah, the response are all really like positive and encouraging. Yeah, but I think most of the adults are really shocking to hear this from the kids, because it's like their first time to hear about what they think of whether they have the same sex parents would make them into like gay or lesbian. Yeah, but to the kids, when it comes to kids, it's like they're kind of really used to that.
Used to it.
They're really used to it already because it's kind of they respond to us like some people speak for us.
Was there any special encouragement for kids to watch with their parents or to invite their parents to watch to start a conversation?
你觉得他们有就是sorry, can you repeat that again?
Did the youth news producers reach out or ask kids to ask their parents to watch with them to try to bridge that gap to help parents understand too?
We didn't particularly like push them to share with their parents. Yeah, but because we put it online and put it on YouTube, so we can see that there are lots of responses from the adults.
And what are the responses from the adults? Did it help them understand?
Yeah, like we said, it's they're just really shocked about this. Yeah, but most of the responses are just really positive and encouraging. Okay, hi, sorry, David.
Yep.
Yeah, the producer is just talking to me.
That's fine.
As we said, the adults are pretty shocked is because that instead of presenting the program in the adult's perspective, we want the kids' voice to be heard. And yes, this is the first time that the kids' voice has. This is the first time that the kids' voice to be heard. So yeah, the adults just didn't know really much about how the kids think.
Does youth news, do you have materials that go to schools as well, or are there any additional materials for kids who may have questions after they've seen the show?
他的意思说你们有把这个放到学校里吗？或是说小孩有没有什么反馈吗？
应该是说我们没有这个。
很多老师有跟我们就是要这个影片，然后在学校里面放，就是当做他们在就是向孩子们解释统治教育的时候的一个教材。对。
Do you mean that did we put it into the school or?
So, do you put it into the school? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we didn't particularly put it into school, but we put it on YouTube, and the teacher knows it. Yeah. So there are lots of teachers that will ask the film from us, like whether they can put it into the school or not.
Very good.
Yeah, because they wanted to make it like educational use.
Okay, very good. Thank you. We're going to go on to the next show, but I do want to share with you some of the comments from the youth juries that we had, because I think they're very interesting in how young people, they'll be interesting not only for the producers, but also for all the people watching the Pre-Jeunesse participants about how young people received it. One comment was, I'm known to be a bit homophobic, and I've tried to accept and normalize it for my brain to process, and this program helps a little. And then another said, I think a program like this is necessary because people who have a family like this have to feel safe, that they're not the only one, and that it's totally normal. So clearly the message was getting through to young people across different cultures.
Yeah. Thank you for the responses.
Very good. Thank you very much for joining us today. It must be very late there.
Thank you.
Yeah. And we're going to move on now to Walk on My Own from By Kids in the USA. And have we got Holly and Elizabeth?
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
How are you today?
Good morning.
Good morning. Good to see you both.
So happy to be here. Thanks for having us.
Lots of discussion on this program on the discussion boards. You've probably been in and reading it. And let's start at the very beginning. How did you find this story?
So I'm going to talk a little bit about By Kids, and then I'll turn it over to Elizabeth to talk about the actual making of the film. We have a public television series that produces 4 or 5 short films made by kids around the world. We came to this story because I was a member of the Clinton Global Initiative, and heard a woman named Molly Melching talk about her experience 35 years ago in Senegal, and how she talked about a whisper campaign of allowing women to start talking about issues around sexuality as a social justice issue. And that whisper campaign went to the husbands, to the uncles, to the imam, to the villagers in the next village. And it took a few years to figure out how potent this story was fundamentally as a template for how to bring social change around any issue. It took a while for me personally, as the executive producer of this series, to get comfortable with the idea that we could be sharing a story around forced child marriage and female genital cutting with elementary, middle school, and high schoolers. But I'm really glad we did. I'll share a conversation we had with our producers at Public Television, and I said, we'd like to do this film. I think it's a really valuable template for how we all think about social change. How do you feel about a film about genital cutting? Can we even say that on American television? And they said, well, you've dealt with very complex issues through the eyes and voices of kids, and I bet you can do it. And with Elizabeth's incredible mentoring to Nidé Fatou, I think we managed to pull that off.
So let's turn over to Elizabeth and find out, how did you prepare Nidé Fatou to shoot and really direct her own story? How did you work with her?
I think, first of all, I had to prepare myself for this issue and wrapping my head around it so that I could learn through her how this process worked in her village. Because since this issue was so integral to me, I really had to do a lot of thinking about how possibly her culture, that they were giving a gift to their children by doing female genital cutting and child marriage, how that was a good thing for them because it set them up in life better. And then we had a friend from Tostan help us identify a few girls in the village before we got there. And when I interviewed them, and Nidé Fatou just grabbed the camera right out of my hand, and she just started talking to her family with the camera. And so it was just really a no-brainer. She was so drawn to the camera, and she was just such a divine creature. I mean, if you have seen the film, she's just as beautiful a soul as she comes off in the film. She's just amazing. So it was that. And then it was just working with her every day, kind of talking to her about who to talk to. And we shot a lot more than was in the film because it was a learning process really for both of us, I think. Both like who to talk to and also how to talk to them, and then also how for both of us really to understand and communicate this issue cross-culturally, because there's all those nuances going on there. So it was pretty.
How long were you there? From between arriving and helping?
Not long. I was only there for 3 weeks, so it wasn't as if I was able to like live there and for 6 months and learn Wolof. I did not learn Wolof. I had somebody help me translate, and then a lot of it was sort of like, it was a lot of sort of getting it. I don't know. So, I had this one day that I was not with the translator, and I ended up having just this amazing time with a bunch of the kids in the village where we were by the water spigot, and I feel like in some ways we were able to like communicate and just share time together in a way that was very valuable for me in connecting with them. But when it came to the nuts and bolts, it was Wolof, and that was complicated, and it was translating again, not just the words, but the cultural intention of the words. I really had to go through that like on a few layers, both there and then coming back and editing it.
So let me talk about the editing for a minute, and then after I do, or ask about the editing for a minute, and then I know Kirsten has a question that's come in live, but let me ask this one first, and that's just, did you have a structure or guidelines when you were editing for how to use different kinds of footage, what was shot by Fatu and what was shot by others, but with her on camera?
Oh, that's a really good question. And also, I don't think I answered the question of her shooting either. The way I just decided to do it is I brought 2 cameras, and I gave her one and I gave myself one. And I tried to the best of my ability to have her shoot what she felt like shooting. And then I supported her with shooting both her capturing it and some things that may be good to get along the way, you know? So if I had had more time, I would have loved to spend more time having her learn the camera, if that's something that really interested her. Like, there's that too. I spent one afternoon with a bunch of the kids, and you in the credits, you'll see a couple shots of some of the other kids. There was this little boy who just also wanted to grab the camera. So we spent like one afternoon with a bunch of kids shooting stuff that they wanted to capture and sent them off into different areas. So yeah, like in my dream world, I would love to spend 6 months and like do a film workshop. But as far as the shooting her, I just really did what I felt was the most efficient process with her, as well as the most organic and entertaining is the wrong word, but just felt the best, you know? And as far as editing, it was just really telling the story and then making sure that just telling the story, really. I mean, I can't tell you that there was any, it was just, as in anything that I shoot, I just want to get as much as I can of whatever the story is, so then we can figure it out when we're editing.
Work with it when you get back. Let me invite Kirsten into, I know she's got a live question. Kirsten?
I have a question from Aldana Dualde. How did you handle the issue that maybe many kids do not really know what exactly is genital mutilation? And you thought about being more clear or specific to answer possible misinformation or imagination around it from a different cultural context?
Very good.
Yeah, I think I'll start by saying that so much of what we do is the 27-minute film that's meant to be the kid's story. The kid is the director. It's interesting to see in a lot of the questions and comments that there are questions about how much is her camera work. And really the mandate that By Kids has is that it's the kid telling the story. And as we all know, filmmaking always includes B-roll. So we hope that the balance in this film, particularly in a story that we're telling retroactively, it's not like this kid's in the middle of a war and we're able to look around through her eyes. She needs to be able to piece together a past story. But the idea that it's her story is very important. So the further point is that each of these films is the beginning, and that we use educational material and a take action guide and the curriculum that public television creates, and even an additional curriculum that includes a media literacy component that our partners at Pen Pal Schools use. This is a way to connect a conversation, grade specific, around the world. So we hope that the film itself can appeal to kids from a very young age to kids who are very older, and that the curriculum is our ability to speak specifically to age groups, so that the more complicated, the more nuanced curriculum can address issues for the older kids, and likewise a little more simplified. So we did our best to frame this as a global issue. 700 million girls around the world were forced into marriage. 200 million plus were genitally cut. I learned in New York that many girls in Harlem have mothers or have been sent back to their villages. So this is not a Senegal-specific issue that's in the past, but we work very hard to make sure that the conversation that is illuminated by the film is carefully scaffolded in appropriate ways. And I wish we could have 5 naked people on American television. That made my heart swell. I know Elizabeth and I both want to make that film. I think we have a very long way. Forget, everything that's happening in America around racial injustice. We also have gender equity issues. And this to me, was an incredible way in to talk about sexuality, because until we own that narrative as women, we have a long way to go. And this village owned that narrative. This girl owned that narrative. So
I was gonna ask, was this an unusual village in their openness and talking about it, in the progress that they've made, in that it even appeared that the men of the village were open to this story being told?
I think that this village is not normal, but I think it is getting more normal through their educating each other and themselves. I wanted to just to get the tail end also of what the earlier question was in terms of kind of covering that whole issue that Kirsten had said. There are two variables of both, I think, working with young people and then also what this particular topic is. One, in my work with young people, especially challenging topics, it's an exploration for them to understand it, like what the story is, for them to discover their story within the bigger story. So there's that angle of like working with the kids, and then the second part is for this specific issue, and illustrating it, as Kirsten had asked. Again, the nuance and the layer of it that I think is so important is that it's a tradition, and this is also with Toasten works with this too. It's a tradition that these people have learned. So they think it's a good thing because it's a tradition in their lives and it's been handed down generation to generation. That, to me, is the real cross-cultural stretch. So that if a child in America can understand that and see that that's what the culture is going through, then they completely understand this culture. And then it becomes like, I don't want to trivialize anything here, but it becomes like a quinceañero and a prom and a thing that goes on in their lives. And I don't mean to be trivializing, but I'm trying to just do an example of what a tradition might be. And then they can see that their lives can change, or, and that's the sexuality part too, because we don't have an open dialogue in our country about sexuality. And this culture, this village changed their whole dynamic because of communicating about something that was so important and that all of them really were on the same page about. They just didn't know to be on the same page because they were following a tradition without communicating about it. I hope that makes sense.
It does.
I hope that makes sense.
Did you take the film back and show? Has it been shown in the village?
Yes. Actually, the executive producer of the film, it's a family, and they took it, and it had its world premiere in the village, and Dave had to watched in the front row while her village and other villages came to watch it. Which again, that's the other brilliant thing with Bike Kids, because it should be with not just everybody watching TV, but the actual people who are making the film. And these villages grow from this. They will communicate more by having seen the film and by having made the film and having everybody know that she made the film. That can help with all this communication, and that it can be an organic process rather than a bad person, don't do this, but things can be different, so let's make a change.
Were you able to leave a camera behind so that she can continue telling her story?
I didn't, and I have to say I don't think that she necessarily really would have wanted that. I did leave an iPad. Actually, I did leave an iPod Touch for a while, because I really wanted her to keep capturing stuff, and some of that footage is in the film. I left an iPod Touch because a big festival was coming up, and I was like, please shoot the festival or shoot whatever, And I think she sort of liked it okay, but I don't think that she was really passionate about it. So somebody actually came and hand delivered it to my apartment who was traveling there. It was so funny. I got the iPad, a couple months later. It's a really good question because I may revisit that. There's not a lot of electricity there, so it was really hard to charge stuff. And, I'm really glad you asked, because I think I'm going to ask again, because if it is fun and useful, that's great. But for me, I felt that it was kind of more of this experience. And if the kids inspired, there was that little boy, Ablai, in that yellow shirt, and I just would love to see him again. He was so passionate. If he finds himself with a camera again, I'm sure he's going to pick up a camera because he was also so natural about it. He just pointed the camera where it was supposed to go. So
good. Well,
anyway.
we're gonna need to move on to the next show, but I did want to leave you with one of the comments from the youth jury that I think really speaks to this program. That says, I like that they not only talked about the issue of violence, but also about the ways in which the people of the village overcome themselves, such as working or studying, and then return to teach what they know. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Such an honor.
This morning.
Yeah, it's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Thanks.
Very good. We're going to go on to Does It Hurt to Get Old from WDR in Germany and Good Karma Productions. Do we have Yves Schwartzman with us?
Yes, I'm here. Nice to be here.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us. So many comments about this program, and they really come back to tell us more about how Melvin brought you this idea, because he is so good and natural on the camera. People love that it came from him. Tell us how he came to you with the idea.
It was a bit of a crazy story. He just came with this idea to an editor from the WDR. And it was like a paper, and it was on his office. And this editor, Mr. Lachmuth, just brought me and Melvin in contact, because Melvin was Mr. Lachmuth liked this idea, and he knows me as a specialist for making documentaries about inner searches from peoples. And I'm not a specialist for kids television. That's not my what I do. This was my first and only kids program I did before, and he brought us together, and it was such a beautiful idea. And our intention was to get real and authentic scenes with Melvin. That was the idea, and it was an experience, and it worked.
So tell us about the development process from the time that it came to you, how you worked with Melvin, how much control he had over various parts, and how.
We just talked a lot before. Yeah, there was a long time until we start shooting. We talked a lot about his thoughts. We talked a lot about what I think that could work on television, and then we just. I coached him to do interviews. It was a bit like this, and then we just did it. We just tried, and we didn't have a lot of budget. We didn't have big equipment. There was just a small camera, and we just worked with natural light and stuff. So we experienced a lot, and then we brought it together. And I think the best thing is that we get so much authentic scenes in this documentary, and it was like Melvin got some ideas, and I had some ideas, and just we brought it together. Yeah. So
did he write his own scripts when he was
not
commentary in between?
He writes his ideas on a paper, but this is like a teenager script. You know what I mean? Just some raw ideas. Yeah, and my work was to bring it together to a story. Yeah.
I actually think you mentioned having very little budget. Based on some of the comments I saw, I think that may have been to your benefit, because a lot of the comments were about they didn't overdo it. It's simple, basic storytelling focused on the people, and with sometimes more money doesn't bring you anything but more trouble.
Yeah, maybe. And that was our intention. That's true. I think, what we would like to do is making a documentary out of a kid's view, out of his perspective. Because I think a lot of kids program is about adult perspectives, made out of adult perspective. I mean, that's normal. Yeah, nobody can put his own thoughts away when he makes a program. And I think Melvin is he's a shy guy. Yeah. He's a shy guy. He's not here because he's too shy to talk to you. That's the point. Because why I am talking to you now. And a lot of I had a lot of work to get him cool into the interviews. You know what? That was a main work for me in this time.
So you mentioned that you're not a children's program maker by background. Yeah. What, aside from putting Melvin at the center of the program, what did you have to learn about making programs for young people? Or did you feel there was no difference? Just tell the story.
Yeah, I know that there is a difference too, for sure. I mean, when I was directing into the settings, that was like, yeah, just leaving him alone. It was, yeah, I don't know what to say. It's not too much difference, yeah. It's just how to work with this young guy. That's the difference, yeah. When you work with an adult, you tell him things, and he is learning that very very fast. And Melvin was like, didn't understand what I mean, yeah, a lot of times. So we have to find a way to communicate. That's the difference, yeah. I mean, I was like a football coach for my son, something like that. So I know how to handle kids, yeah. But yeah, at work it's different.
I was thinking more about in terms of thinking about your audience as you're telling the story, thinking about how young people receive information versus how you're.
Yeah, I didn't think about that in this time. I think it just was like, yeah, let's do it, yeah, and then we will see what happens. It was never. I never was thinking like, okay, what will the audience think about that?
Was this shown as part of an umbrella series, or did it just stand alone by itself? Or?
Yeah, it was like an experience. Yeah, when we worked on this program, nobody knew what place it will be sent on the program, which part of the program in the WDR it's getting after it. So we did the documentary, and after it we say, okay, it could be a good place in this Sunday morning family program. That was the place where they sent it. But when we did the program, there was no, yeah, we didn't have any idea of what's going on after it.
And do you know anything about the composition of the audience? Did families watch together?
I think that happens. We have been to other festivals with this film, and the young audience after the program was trying to get some autographs from Melvin and shooting some selfies with him. So I think the young audience liked this person. Yeah.
Very good. I think one of the things that impressed people quite a bit was the variety of stories that you told, and about having many different images of aging. That you had the one woman who was quite elderly and saying, "I'm ready to die. Nothing's fun anymore," and then you had the very fashionable woman who is very active, and sort of in the middle you had the couple who live on the grounds of the elder care place, but he actually gets them to talk about their intimacy, their sexuality. How did you go about balancing the stories that you were telling?
I mean, yeah, we researched a lot before and tried to find interested people. Yeah. So that was the main part of the work before we were shooting, yeah, getting the most interesting stories. So there was no, I mean, Melvin got some ideas which kind of people he wants to talk to, and I got some ideas which scenes could be interesting, which settings could be good for have some experience, yeah, like in the home for elderly. That's like an experience for a 13-year-old guy in this way. Yeah, you've never seen that before, and I mean that was just a bit like luck that we were lucky to find these people, yeah, that were so authentic and finding the way to find a conversation between Melvin and his people. That was a bit of luck too, yeah, for sure.
Well, we're going to move on to the next, but let me leave you with a couple of quotes from the youth juries around the world, because they were actually quite taken with this program. One of them said, "I really liked the part where he goes to the supermarket. You don't imagine it like that, and it's pretty cool to experience." Some of us reaching my age think it's not so cool to experience for ourselves. But and then another saying, I like the child's maturity when he asks the couple about about their sexuality, because we're all curious about how it will be to be in a couple when we're older. Is it it's more romantic and beautiful? It's nice that a couple has those kinds of ideas and values. And I think the one that maybe the longest term benefit of the program is the child on the youth jury who said, "I would like to be the one asking the questions." So you're inspiring young people to go out and become reporters, become documentarians themselves.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon, your time.
Thank you very much.
Very good. Thanks. As we move to the next program, I'm going to report that we've got 140 people live on the stream right now. So thank you all for tuning in at all hours of the day for the Pre-Jeunesse, the first ever virtual Pre-Jeunesse discussion session. We're going to go on to life from Vientos Culturales in Mexico. Elke Franca, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, can hear you perfectly. Good to see you. Start by just telling us how you came to this story. I know it fits into a lot of the work that you did, but this story in particular, how did you come to it?
Yeah, we are a Mexican NGO, and we produce programs for children and youth for public TV, and we have a News for Kids program in Mexico. So we did a reportage about the suicide issue, and 2 or 3 years ago, and we got so touched about the problem and about what we saw in this village, and talking to these young people, that we decided to follow the story and to find the way to tell the story. Yeah, that was, but it was through our News for Kids program. Yeah.
You come into the story at a particular time when there have already been several suicides in the village. Did the story, and so you start to tell that story, but did it change as you went along, as the young people put together the hip hop group? As you must have had to react to what was happening in the village.
Yeah, the problem, the suicide problem, it's a long time going on. I think it's almost a decade now that we have a lot of suicide among young indigenous people. So it's very little known that we have in Mexico more than 68 different indigenous languages spoken and indigenous tribes. So that's very little known. And so as we started to know these young people more and more, of course, we were very aware about the risk, also about the story, to get into this kind of issue, and as things were going on, developing more and more, we got very much involved, and it's difficult to. I think the good thing of the story is that we can follow these young people finding their own identity. It's a story against discrimination. It's a story that visualizes these young people. They never have been on a screen, because in the Mexican media landscape, normally we do not see these young people. They cannot speak of. They even don't have the right to be themselves, because mostly in the schools it's prohibited to speak native language because the teachers cannot understand. So the film is much about to being themselves, and I think we can see that how they develop their own identity throughout the story. I'm not sure if I got your question, Dave.
Hello, Elke. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, great. David is lost for a moment, so I will just take over a bit.
Yeah, okay.
Can you tell us a little bit more how you work with the actor?
Oh, these are not actors. These are protagonists because it's a non-fiction, you know. So we just we knew Eric. We have a kind of main protagonist, if you noticed in the program. So we knew Eric, and he has all these ideas, you know, to promote arts in the village, to do something against these issues, because everybody has like a kind of experience with suicide in this village. So he has all this initiative to do something about it, and they're all actually very brave, and we started with Eric, and then through Eric we started to know all the other teens, the other kids, the young people, you know. And so for the story, the main goal was to have these huge events during the village fair. And this is very unusual. Normally, in these villages, there's nothing like youth expressions or events for youth or all these modern dancing or hip hop. It's not accepted as a cultural expression. So for the story, the main goal was to have the participation of these young people in the village fair, and also we knew that we need to have all these testimonies, you know, because the documentary starts with the testimonies, with the stories of these young people, and it was Eric who contacted and listened to these people, and then they start to integrate in this group. Yeah, it was really a development.
Okay,
Apologies,
David back. Yeah, great.
Yeah, my phone overheated, so the discussion must be very very active. My phone overheated and shut down, but now I'm back. I may have missed a question, so pardon me if this repeats something. But how long were you shooting in the village to get the complete story? One of the suicides obviously happens after the performances in the market.
We were shooting about half a year. It wasn't as much shooting days. I think about 20 days. Yeah. And so I think I cannot hear you very well, Dave, but I think you asked me about the outreach, about the outcome, what happens after.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the documentary was life-changing in many things for the young people who participated in it. It is a gift for them, you know. It is a gift for them, and this is a very important part. And about the audiences, we have the movie is having a huge impact among young people because they can identify, and it was perceived from the very beginning as a social impact project. We were thinking, what can we do to save these lives? What can we do that this does not happen anymore? And you know, it happens during the production process. We lost one of the kids, and you can see it in the movie. It was heartbreaking for all of us. And so the main goal is fight discrimination, give them the right to be themselves and save lives. So, but you cannot do it, you know, there's so much needed. It's such a complex problem. So what we really wanted to have, like a first step, is to open the dialogue and to visualize. And this actually happens after the kids. When the kids watch the movie, we have had a lot of school screenings, so we have the possibility to be with them and observe them during the screenings. And what happens after watching this documentary, that they start to talk, they start to express themselves, and they start to talk about things that they haven't never talked about before, and that's very important. So they start to talk with each other, because there's a lot of communication problems going on also. So expressing feelings and everything. So I think in this matter, the documentary helps a lot to open the dialogue and also to visualize the problem. Yeah.
We need to go on to the next show, but I have one last question, and that is: was there any resistance from inside the village to telling its stories outside, to exposing the problems of the village?
It is there's a resistance because mostly suicides are hiding inside the family. They hide it. It's like a kind of but there wasn't it wasn't a huge problem to tell the story and to move inside the village, and yeah, it wasn't.
Very good.
There was a lot of confidence. We are all friends, so it wasn't a problem.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we're going to move on to the last program for which we have a representative on the line with us, and that's Chlorofilia from Encuentro channel in Argentina and Planta Alta TV in Argentina. Have we got Fernando Rotondaro and Andres Schenkman?
I'm afraid we cannot hear Fernanda, so I'm going to take her place for a while until she reconnects. The Encuentro channel had this idea of making a show on plants, and they made this big, they asked different production companies to bring up some ideas, and we came up with this idea of putting together like a fictional world and a documentary world, and to create like a different nature show. We wanted to make audience fall in love to nature from a different point of view. So we started working on this format in which every episode is completely different to the next. So we have this, as you said, Wes Anderson's mockumentary in this episode, but the show starts like the futuristic dystopia, and then it changes into a thriller, and then it becomes like a romantic comedy and a horror episode, and it keeps changing from episode to episode, and we wanted to bring all the creative elements from cinema to nature documentary. And in this case, of course, we made this like lovely gift to Wes Anderson, which is like a person we all love, of course.
That's a fantastic idea. Did that? Do you think that helped bring kids from episode to episode because they didn't know what to expect?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's something that people always says. It's like a journey. You don't know what's gonna come next. So it keeps your attention. It keeps your curiosity.
Did you try to match
Hi.
Good, you're here.
I was saying that the series had a very strong identity, even when each episode was very different. And that was very interesting because each week the audience was waiting for that difference. What would be the difference in the next and following episodes?
Was it the same presenters each week, just in different settings and styles?
Eileen is the actress, and she.
So always Eileen.
If the host is always the same, yes. Eileen.
And
yes, it is always Eileen, but in each episode, her role changes. So that was very, very important because here she is the leader of the team, and in other episodes, she's the woman in lab. For example, for the episode for pollination and reproduction of plants, she is a young lady, and so we follow her love story while we present the reproduction story of plants.
And did you try to match? So you did try to match the theme of the episode with the style, the woman in love with the reproduction of plants.
Yes, that was the main idea. Each cinema genre is related to the theme of the episode. So, for example, as I said, for reproduction, it was a romantic story. Or, for example, for the search of light for trees, it was a thriller or a horror movie. Perhaps Andres can explain it better. But each episode, the cinema genre and the story of Eileen was completely related to the topic about plants.
Good. Our engineers are suggesting that maybe if you turn off your camera, your sound will be better. So if you can try that. Let me ask, was everything shot specifically for this series, or did you have access to a nature footage archive? Because the shooting is just beautiful.
Well, actually, we filmed everything for this show, and
Wow.
It was one of our goals, and we are quite proud of that, because it was like a big project, you know, and we had to film all over Argentina, sometimes in really harsh conditions. We had the chance and the luck to work in spectacular sceneries, but also we did a big job in the studio. We created this studio for like 10 days, and we put all these different landings to recreate like the forest of the floor or the treetops in the jungle and different situations when we wanted to go really inside. And also we had this like time-lapse studio working like for 5 months with different stations, taking pictures from different processes like flowers blooming and roots growing and things like that. So yeah, it was nice, really, really, really fun.
That's a huge undertaking to shoot all that originally. Yeah.
Yes.
And what has been the response from kids, from young people? Have you heard how they like the series, if they go on to explore more?
Yeah, actually, they started inviting us to schools to talk about the show. And if you watch like social media, it was really strong, and we were a little bit afraid at the beginning, because it's not easy to bring kids and plants together, you know, because the first thing that you think about is like, okay, plants are boring. They don't move, they don't do nothing. And we did something quite good, because kids really fell in love with plants. They really got attached to Eileen, which I think that was something really good, because she was like her door to this nature world.
Very good. We have come to the end of our hour, so let me just thank you for joining us to talk about chlorophylla. I do want to pass on a few comments. We don't have a representative from the last show, Teenage Boss, but I do just want to pass on a few quick comments. Participants raised questions about the structuring of the story, how much was hands-off documentary and how much was created or influenced by the producers. The presence of the social worker specialist caused some to ask whether the entire series has a children's welfare specialist, because the family circumstances are so difficult in so many ways and the emotions so strong. Similar questions came up because of the social changes that were announced at the end, commitment to improve the situation of the village. So people noticed that, people wondered how much interference or how much it was structured. Someone noticed that the frequent repetition of the low clouds over the village in time-lapse shots gave way to a sunny sky when the story was completed and there was a happy ending. But overall, the central character was seen as relatable and as someone that you'd like to see succeed. So that's the last program in this category. Let me remind you to go vote. You just have a short time after this, a couple hours after this, before you can go vote on this category. Let me remind you to tune in tomorrow morning again for the fiction category for 11 to 15. And with that, it's been a pleasure having these conversations, and let me turn it over to Kirsten.
Actually, you just did what I had planned to do, to also remind everybody of doing the voting. 1 more hour left to go, and then our category 11 to 15 nonfiction will be closed. Thanks a lot to all the panelists and also to the audience out there. And I pass on to Maya.
Thank you a lot, Kirsten. Thank you very much, David. Great work. Thank you to all the panelists, to all the production people who really shared their insight. Thank you to all the people outside there, and hopefully see you tomorrow. Bye from Prisoners.